monkeys. I'm Eddie Braverman, that's Midas Mulligan Magoo, and this is Lucky Episode 30. Work on WallStreetOasis.com. This week we're discussing the upheaval in North Africa, the internet kill switch, and the NASDAQ getting hacked. So let's kick it off with the Maghreb, as we call it here in Europe. Egypt has been the story of 10 days or so, and I think it's important to look at the root. And that can be traced all the way back to WikiLeaks and Julian Assange, who was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize earlier this week, by the way. It all started with documents that revealed to the people of Tunisia just how corrupt their government was. Now, the people of Tunisia burned their ruling family out of the country, and their rebellion inspired the people of Egypt to rise up. Mubarak, who's been our stooge over the past 3 decades, is being run out on a rail. And now the people of Yemen, Libya, and a few other Arab countries are getting restless. Revolution could conceivably sweep the entire region. And I think that's fantastic, because it's the young people throwing out the old. And the old guard isn't going to go without a fight, but it's really exciting to see the young people harnessing the power of technology to lead a rebellion and tell the old guard, hey, look, you guys have fucked things up long enough. And frankly, I think every government in the world has been put on notice. Midas, what do you think?
Jesus, man, you are such an Assange groupie. You should come with a turkey baster and a bottle of Astroglide with the big wiki label on it. Look, man, nobody knows better than the Tunisians and the Egyptians and everybody else over there what they've been going through over the past 30, 300, you could argue 3,000 years. They don't need us telling them about their suffering, just like they don't need the U.S. Read the U.S. setting them up with a new puppet government. The reality is that all of the political uprisings that we've had over the past 20 years or so in Eastern Europe and the Middle East have been largely directed by and linked to Langley. So until I see a reason to believe otherwise, I'm going to have a hard time believing that this is anything different. So I'm reserving judgment until we see who comes out on top. But this stinks of another pre-planned scenario with our tax dollars backing it up. As far as
call it the hopeful anarchist in me.
Yeah, I understand.
I know it's got Langley's fingerprints all over it, but everything over there does. I'm just, for once, I'm hoping. I just don't want to be a total cynic about it and think that maybe there's some hope.
Hey, that's what I'm here for, baby. Listen, Mubarak's gone, but as it looks right now, it looks as though his regime is still going to stay in control. So until I see something happen that gives me a reason to believe in something better, I'm going to stick to my guns. The notion of changing anything in this part of the world is fantastic, but the fact that it hasn't changed in about, the last 10 centuries or so, I'm not so excited about it this time around. So I actually see this event benefiting the Wahhabists in the area more than anybody. I know that's a pretty cynical way to approach it, but that's just my take on it. So hopefully in this case I'm completely wrong and you're right.
Well, one thing it's doing, Egypt is making some folks in the government nervous. People in power will do anything to stay in power.
Yes.
And that's no different in Washington, D.C. or Timbuktu.
Correct.
The Egyptian government tried to stall out the revolution by shutting down the internet. Luckily, hackers found workarounds like Tor and a few others. Much closer to home, Republican Senator Susan Collins is introducing legislation for the United States' very own internet kill switch. She's selling it under the guise of national security, claiming that the president needs the ability to shut down the internet if we're ever under cyber attack. Right.
My ass.
We need to develop a parallel internet completely out of the reach of any government. I know there are efforts underway right now to do that very thing, but the human race needs this technology yesterday. The internet and the free flow of information are the only ways to keep government in check. What do you think?
Man, I'm all over this one. Actually, a buddy of mine is in the cloud computing game, and he told me about how the Feds shut down Pirate Bay, and it's been pretty much done under the radar. And it definitely has some Gestapo-ish, KGB-istic hints to it that a lot of people aren't really aware of. The notion that I believe the elites had in mind when the internet was allowed to circulate, hint, DC and the Kremlin have been online since the late 60s, so it's not like the internet is really that revolutionary. We just got our hands on it recently, was that it would facilitate commerce and allow the control of information. Instead, you get nut jobs like Eddie and me on different sides of the world conspiring to hijack tugboats of dog shit and, you know, redistribute them on the black market. So I definitely agree that the internet's crucial to keeping the power of God out of the hands of government. But I also think it's a great time to bring up the perfect mechanism that we already do have to keep power out of the hands of government, which is called the Second Amendment, and which is something that they have been after for a much longer time than the internet. So, you know, the government's definitely running a little bit scared right now, and we're very quickly going to find out how representative of our interest those Tea Party candidates that got into Washington were. And just remember, guys, in spite of all this techno crap that Eddie tells you, the only real check to big government is a smoking gun.
Oh, nice.
Yes, sir.
Well, I'll tell you what.
I worked on that one. You like that one? Bang, 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 bang.
Because they went and shut down the sites that enable me to watch the Super Bowl. So Uncle Eddie got no Super Bowl tonight. You know, a broadcast that's free for anyone with rabbit ears on their television, and yet I can't watch it for some reason. So... Anyway, how about we talk about something financial? Our very own NASDAQ announced that they've been penetrated by hackers. The OMX in New York was breached, and this is a very, very big deal. The security of electronic stock markets is considered on par with air traffic control by the government. So I know that this is a big wake-up call for those guys. Imagine what someone could do with access to the backbone of that system. The FBI and the Secret Service are working with the NASDAQ to suss out any potential damage or further threats, and details are coming out now almost on an hourly basis. It looks like the hackers gained access to the OMX Directors Portal, which is where the directors of Fortune 500 companies go to upload their quarterly financial data before it gets released. And now it's looking like the hackers may have had access to it for the past year. Unbelievable. What do you think?
I think machines ain't that smart, and anything man-built can be taken apart. If a computer system is built, no matter what the level of sophistication is, it can be breached. It's very, very simple. I think this brings up a much larger philosophical point that we don't have time for today, but it's man's further trip away from himself, away from faith, away from community. And this is what's kind of bringing us closer to this edge that feels really close by. I mean, this is about so much more than the NASDAQ. Every new generation bases its sense of self-worth on what they create. And I think that the self-professed geniuses, who in my mind are the ultimate idiots of our current techno-boom era, think that these machines will make us a better world. And events like this are showing the opposite. Guys often ask me about HFT, the future of prop, and so forth. The bottom line is, if you want fluid, liquid markets, you need investor confidence. You need people to feel comfortable investing. You need the little guy. You always need the little guy. And Wall Street has not only forgotten the little guy, but now we're taking pride in fucking the little guy. With the second catastrophic, monumental, black swan type event of just the last 7 months, we're still not going to learn anything from this. I mean, Look at this as like the 10-year holding penalty attached to the when will small investors get back into market activity discussion. This is just making things a whole lot worse, and it should give a lot of us a reason to reevaluate our thinking. Look at it as another reason why I would like to see open outcry back. Look at it another reason why mechanization is really not a good thing for markets. As shady of a guy as you might be, Eddie, I'd rather give you my money to play with than some motorized database, because to harken back on my previous point, if you fuck me, I can find you and blow your head off. This sort of setup gives absolutely no recourse to anybody who doesn't have billions and trillions of dollars in play, and it's just going to make people walk away. This is why I don't like machines, government, and an inbred financial system running this system and running my life, basically. So I think it's an
interesting point, man, because when I got into this business, there were no machines. I mean, basically, if you could see the computers we worked on back then, it was ridiculous. You had to pound the space bar to get them to refresh.
Right.
But that was a very real part of doing business, was knowing that whoever you're talking to on the other side of the phone is an actual person who, could come hunt you down and punch you in the face if you fuck them. And, I mean, that is just, I don't know, maybe I'm just being nostalgic, but, I mean, that was a real component of doing business back then that I don't think exists to a great degree today.
I don't think we can, again, I don't think human evolution is something that we can touch on in this show, but we've been doing things a certain way for 50,000 years. Just because you tell me that I'm supposed to trust this machine, it's not going to happen overnight, and people who are opportunistic are going to take advantage of, people who are, I don't even want to use the word suckers, just people who are trusting. But I think that's something that we're going to see more and more of in the near future, and good luck to anybody who's trying to stay in charge of it. So, moving on. Let's get to this week's reads, and I actually have a great book that ties into this whole thing called Confidence Game, how hedge fund manager Bill Ackman called Wall Street's bluff. This is a story of a man who was called a fraud by the Wall Street Journal, by the New York Times. It's a story of a man who was investigated by Elliot, Pay for Sex with Your Text Dollar Spitzer, and the SEC, all because he spent 6 years warning investors how the $2.5 trillion bond insurance business was a scam and a catastrophe waiting to happen. Now, Ackman went on to make his investors over $1 billion, and is still a relative unknown today, but the shit that the inbred Wall Street / Washington system put him through is really worth the read for all you guys getting into the game with dollar signs in your eyes. Bill Ackman's the type of Neanderthal, almost human, hairy-backed ape all you monkeys should aspire to become. Read about it. Keep your bananas out of your tailpipes and your shit flinging in the right direction until next time. And I'm gonna let Eddie take you out of here.
Well, that's funny, man, because my book of the week is extremely similar. You guys should probably bundle these books and buy them together. I don't have a copy, or I don't have something to show you because I actually bought it on my Kindle. But a little over a month ago, a quarterly French journal asked me to write a piece about the Madoff scandal, and specifically the French connection to the Madoff scandal. For those of you who don't know, Madoff was a much bigger deal here in Europe than he was in the States. Europeans had easily 10 times more money with him than Americans did.
No, sir.
If you look at the names carved at the top of the Arc de Triomphe here in Paris, Bernie Madoff took every one of those families down. No joke. I mean, he aristocrats, princes, he took them all. But anyway, in the course of my research, I came across the book No One Would Listen by Harry Markopolos. He's the guy that discovered Madoff was a fraud, proved it beyond the shadow of a doubt, and handed the bulletproof case to the SEC back in 2000. The SEC did absolutely nothing with it and allowed the fraud to continue another 8 years, costing investors over $60 billion.
Big shot.
And the book is an absolute page-turner. Markopolos is just a quant who was asked to create an algorithm to compete with Madoff, which obviously couldn't be done because a real trading system can't compete with a fraud. It's really fascinating stuff, and you'll be blown away at how easy it was for Madoff to perpetrate this fraud for 20 years without getting caught.
Yeah.
That's all I've got this week, guys. Thanks for watching Not Safe for Work on WallStreetOasis.com, and have a great week.
We'll see you next week, monkeys.